Today in the kitchen, we're making red velvet cake. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees. And I'm using the Watkins food coloring with no artificial dyes. In a medium bowl, I'm gonna add in 2.5 cups of gluten-free flour. I'm using the Just About all-purpose gluten-free flour. 1 teaspoon of salt. And 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And then mix this all together. In the KitchenAid mixer with the paddle attachment, I'm going to cream the butter on medium speed. I have 1 stick of butter, that's half a cup of butter, and I've let it sit out to get to room temperature. And then I'm going to turn on the KitchenAid mixer and cream the butter for a few minutes. And then I'm going to add 1.5 cups of sugar to the butter. And then I'm going to mix the sugar and butter and beat this until it's light and fluffy for about 3 minutes. Okay, it's been about 3 minutes, and now I'm going to add in the eggs. I have 2 eggs, and I've let these sit out to room temperature, and I'm going to add these one at a time, and then each time I'm going to mix them in. Okay, the first one is good and mixed in, and now we're going to add in the second egg. That second egg is good and mixed in, and now I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla. I'm using the pure Mexican vanilla extract. And then mix in the vanilla. And then add in 2 tablespoons of cocoa. I'm using the Hershey's cocoa. And you can just scrape down the sides as needed when you're mixing this up. I'm using a Pyrex measuring cup, and I'm going to mix together the buttermilk, vinegar, and red food coloring. I'm using 1 cup of buttermilk, and I've let that sit out to room temperature. 1 tablespoon of white vinegar. And I'm using the Watkins food coloring. It is gluten-free. And it is made with 100% natural vegetable juices and spices. We're going to use the red food coloring. So this red food coloring has no artificial dyes in it, and so that means no red 40. And you need 1 tablespoon of the food coloring, which is going to be the entire bottle of the food coloring. And it's not going to fill quite 1 tablespoon, but we are going to use the whole bottle. And just pour that into the buttermilk and vinegar. And then mix that all together. Now I'm gonna mix half the flour and then half of the buttermilk mixture to the KitchenAid mixer. And then mix that together on low speed. And you just want to mix that until it's just combined, and then you're going to add in the rest of the flour and the rest of the buttermilk. And I'm just going to use a spatula and scrape the rest of that out. And then mix again on low speed until it's just combined. If you need to, you can stop and scrape down the sides of the bowl. And here's what the color looks like with the no artificial dye. I'm gonna go ahead and get the pans out, and we're using 2 circle pans, and I'm gonna lightly spray those with Pam. And I'm gonna divide the batter between the 2 circle pans. These 2 circle cake pans are 9 inches. If you wanted to do a 3-layer cake, you would use 3 6-inch cake pans. I've got those all divided into the circle pans, and I'm going to give them a good shake so they're going to be even and leveled out. I'm going to put these in the oven, and I'm going to bake them between 30 and 35 minutes. These have been baking for 35 minutes and they're ready to come out of the oven. And you can check them with a toothpick and insert it into the middle, and if it comes out clean, then they are done. Let those cool on a cooling rack, and while those are cooling, we can start making the frosting. I'm using Philadelphia cream cheese. I have 2 packs of cream cheese that I've let get to room temperature, and I'm going to add that to the KitchenAid mixer. And then I'm going to beat that for a couple of minutes. Then I'm gonna add 3 sticks of butter. That's 1.5 cups of butter. I've also let these get to room temperature. And then beat the cream cheese and butter together. You're gonna beat that until it's smooth and fluffy. This recipe for the cream cheese frosting does make a lot of frosting, so you can cut it in half. It just depends on how much frosting you want to have on the cake. If you need to, you can stop and scrape down the sides of the bowl. And then continue mixing. add pure Mexican vanilla, 1 teaspoon. And then I'm adding a pinch of salt. I have a measurement of a pinch of salt. If you do not have this, just pinch the salt and add it in. And then mix this all together. Once that is good and mixed up, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna add in 5.5 cups of powdered sugar. However, I'm gonna add 1 cup at a time and I'm gonna put it on a low speed. And then scrape down the sides of the bowl as needed. Adding in the 2nd cup. The 3rd cup. The 4th cup. Adding in the 5th cup. And then the last of the powdered sugar, a 1/2 cup. As you can see, this recipe for the cream cheese frosting makes quite a bit, so you have plenty and can add however much frosting you would like to add to your red velvet cake. I'm going to scrape down the sides of the bowl and give this one more mix and make sure that it's all mixed well together. I'm done mixing the frosting and I'm just going to remove the flat beater and then it's going to be ready for us to frost the cake. The cake has cooled off and now I'm going to release it from the pans. I'm just going to tap it on the bottom and it should release pretty good from the pan since we sprayed it with some Pam and made it not stick. You could also add some gluten-free flour to the pan to help it not stick to the pan. I'm going to go ahead and add the frosting. I'm just going to do a quick frosting to this cake and then we're going to see how the color turned out using the Watkins food coloring. So I'm just putting the cream cheese frosting in the middle here and then I'm going to add the 2nd layer to the cake. And then I'll add more frosting and get the cake entirely covered with all the frosting. So I used the Watkins No Artificial Dyes food coloring to make this red velvet cake. And we are trying to avoid the red 40 dyes. And I just want to say, if you haven't watched the To Die For documentary yet, it's worth watching and I highly recommend it. It's definitely worth the watch and very eye-opening to the dyes put in our foods. And I'm hoping for some change in our food industry. But we are trying to limit the red 40, and while we may not catch everything, we are making changes to what we do know. I also recommend doing your own research, especially if you have an autoimmune disease or you have anything that affects your intestines, because the red 40 does do a lot of damage to the intestines. I also know that sugar does not do well in the intestines, and this cake is full of some sugar. However, there are times where you just want to have something sweet, so adding in one dessert for the entire week is usually what we do, just to have that in moderation. I've got all the frosting onto the cake, and you can set this into the fridge for about 30 minutes and let that frosting set. And I'm going to cut it open and it will be ready to serve. And this is what it looks like on the inside. It still has that red coloring to it. It's just not going to be that bright red that you normally see with the synthetic artificial food dyes, but it's still going to have that same great taste of the red velvet cake without all the red 40 dye. You can find the full recipe in the description box down below. To our non-gluten-free friends, you can just replace that gluten-free flour with regular all-purpose flour. Enjoy! Dinner is served. Thank y'all for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe and let us know if you made red velvet cake. We'll see you next time in the kitchen.